Welcome friends to Granny's GodPod number 17. Today I want to look at who Jesus went to see after his resurrection. So please do subscribe. Perhaps surprisingly, it was not family first. But Jesus' resurrection appearances were all to believers who were dismayed by his death. Dr. John Barnett of DTBM, that's Discover the Book Ministries, points out that Jesus' first recorded meetings were to 5 groups: the defiled, depressed, doubters, deserters and deniers, and Jesus ministers to all these. Mary was last at the cross and first at the tomb. She had such devotion to Jesus. After Peter and John had left, she stayed at the tomb, weeping, and thinking Jesus was the gardener, she asked where they had taken the body. He spoke her name, in the Aramaic, Mariam, and when she heard his voice, she knew, and replied, in the Aramaic, Rabboni, a term used for a respected spiritual teacher. So Mary was the first human being to see the risen Lord. But who wasn't the first? How about his mother Mary, or John, the beloved disciple? Jesus had cast out 7 demons from Mary, who had been defiled by not just one demon but by a complete set. Mary had a dark and troubled past, but she had been purified and truly loved Jesus as her Saviour. Demons are usually associated with mental or physical disorders, but we are not told what Mary's defilement was. Perhaps deliberately, because this allows more people to identify with her and be comforted. It also shows how much Jesus values deep and steadfast love. Then we have the 2 disciples going to Emmaus. N.T. Wright suggests this was perhaps Cleophas with his wife Mary. The 2 were depressed. They hadn't understood the bigger picture and were leaving Jerusalem, probably in the process of disbanding. They had all anticipated a big climax, when Israel's God would become king of all the world. They told the stranger, "We were hoping that he would be the one to redeem Israel." The crucifixion was thus the complete and final devastation of their hopes. How could they have been so mistaken? The response from the stranger is to tell the story differently. Beginning with Moses and all the prophets, Jesus explained to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. Jesus' execution was not the clear disproof of his messianic vocation, but in fact its confirmation and climax. With spirits lifted, the 2 rushed back to Jerusalem. But the others did not believe they had seen the risen Lord any more than they believed the women. Did Jesus begin to wonder if any of his preaching had penetrated the disciples' understanding? They were such a dispirited group of discouraged and crushed people, hiding behind locked doors for fear of the Jews, and not making any move to go to Galilee. Jesus, in his resurrected body, could pass through a locked door. He appeared among them to give them peace and reassure them. He showed them his wounds and ate some food to prove he was bodily risen. But Thomas wasn't there, and when he was told that Jesus had appeared to them, he said he wouldn't believe unless he saw Jesus with his own eyes. Thomas doubted, But Jesus came looking for him 8 days later. Thomas saw him and believed, though Jesus rebuked him and said how much better for those who believe but have not seen. Then Jesus appeared to the 8 disciples who had gone to Galilee to go fishing. Were they returning to their past occupation, in effect deserting the cause? When Jesus said it was Jesus on the shore, Peter jumped out of the boat and swam towards him. Jesus did not rebuff Peter for his 3 denials before the cock crowed, but was asked 3 times if he loved Jesus. Peter affirmed his love and was told to feed my lambs, tend my sheep, feed my sheep, and follow me. On being asked the 3rd time, Peter realized this was his redemption for his 3 denials. It is a common thread that Jesus was not immediately recognized by his followers. It may have been partly that no one expected to see him again, although there was something different about him, because he could appear in a locked room. And when Peter and John looked in the tomb, the grave cloths were still in place, with spices between the wrappings undisturbed. Jesus' body had passed through without spilling dust. In Revelation 5, John tells us Jesus looks like a lamb that was slaughtered when he appears in heaven and before the host. He could show the disciples the wounds to his hands and side, so maybe his face was distorted by the beatings he had suffered. Paul says, if Christ has not been raised, both his preaching and our faith is in vain. But as Gamaliel had said so wisely when he told the Sanhedrin, if the movement is of human origin, it will fail. But if it is from God, you will not be able to stop it. If Jesus had not appeared to the disciples, they would have remained discouraged and eventually disbanded, just as the Jews and the Romans had expected. Jesus' brother James, who became head of the church in Jerusalem, had been a denier until he himself received a post-resurrection appearance. After his crucifixion, Jesus was only seen and touched by loving hands. His scars are a mark of his love, his sacrifice. We will see past his scars just as he sees past ours and still loves us. Like Michelangelo, who could see his magnificent statue of David within a rejected slab of marble, Jesus can see what is within us. His post-resurrection visitations show that he does not reject the defiled, the depressed, the doubters, the deserters, nor the deniers. Thanks be to God.